Would you like to be somebody who understands how your consciousness exists both in the past and in the future, so not only in the present? So if you'd like to understand that, listen to this entire video where I explain how our consciousness is connected to that which our ancestors have sort of absorbed from their environment, and also our consciousness in the now constitutes a part of who we will be in the future. So our consciousness is almost omnipresent or existing across time, which is not what we usually think. We usually think consciousness is just in the now and that's it, but that's actually incorrect, I think. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So consciousness, according to Google, is defined as the state of being aware and responsive to one's surroundings. So we tend to have the conception that our consciousness is sort of like the center of our existence, and without consciousness we can't really exist, because that is the determining factor between existing and not existing. Like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, and because you think, then therefore you exist. Because when we say I exist, we can only say that because we're in the now, and we are able to interpret our environment. That's what makes us sort of unrefutably alive. So a key factor of consciousness entails the now, this moment, because you exist across time, but you are only conscious in this singular moment. Recently, however, I have realized that our consciousness does not exclusively exist in the current moment. And what I'm about to explain might seem quite obvious, yet it is crucial to take seriously and be aware of, in my eyes. So let's talk about the future first. Depending on who you are in the current moment and what you are thinking in the now, your future self is influenced by your current consciousness. So in some sense, you are already part of the future. So your consciousness does not only exist in the current moment, but also is a constituent of the future. So your consciousness exists across time, and that's a profound concept. That really is. It is profound because it also explains the divine element that is attributed to consciousness in the biblical allegories. The concept of God is considered omnipresent. Hence, it exists everywhere at all times, and that is something like, I think the Bible says something like, man was created in the image of God. So there's some divine connection that is shared, or divine element that is shared by humans and God. So this divine being or existence, and that has to do with our consciousness. So it's really awesome, a really awesome idea. And consciousness has similar qualities to this omnipresent being. Thus, it is potentially divine. Consciousness has similar qualities because it somewhat has the potential to exist across time. Like, time is, or life is sort of like, you have the variable of time. So you have different time frames that move along, and you have space. So 3D. So you can, in one time frame, you'll be here, and then in the second time frame, you'll be here. Like my arms are here now, and then they're here. So they're moving, and our consciousness is almost like spanning across time, which is really interesting. So with that, there is an indication of an unlimited potential in consciousness. Now, of course, humans are mortal, so the consciousness of the singular human being is finite. Yet the knowledge of your ancestors can be stored by the means of books, movies, music, etc., which is essentially culture and tradition. Traditions are bundles of your ancestors' wisdom. So to a degree, the consciousness of your ancestors, which absorbed wisdom across its limited time span, is transferred to the next generation of consciousness. So in some sense, consciousness is longer lived than our singular lifespan of the single human being. Plus, the Jungian theory of the collective unconscious indicates that the knowledge of our genetic ancestors is stored in your very own unconscious mind. So the conscious experience of your ancestors is not only stored externally in books, for example, but also internally in your very own psyche. An example might be trauma experienced by your forefathers in war, which occurred because of their genetic predisposition to be sensitive to certain traumatizing stimuli. And that genetic composition is obviously transferred to you, so you also carry their consciousness in you. And consciousness is also, you can think of it as the instrument used to absorb your surroundings and then store the information of the surrounding. So when you are born, you do not start building knowledge from scratch. You have a genome which guides your instincts. And when you get older, you have culture and traditions which teach you knowledge of your ancestors, because your ancestors spent time absorbing their environment and understanding life, and trying to figure out ways to construct a society that is peaceful, which might be a culture then. And you pick up where your ancestors left off and hopefully continue to progress the culture, the tradition, and help humanity progress in general. And that is why your consciousness exists in the past, not only the present. So once more, to discuss the future, like the thought you have now is already part. Let's say you want to go and bake a cake. You have the thought, so you are already part of the future, and that is an awesome, essential concept to understand. It really is, because that's why your conduct in the now is so essential to get right somehow. Like, I mean, what is right? That's the question, but relatively optimal, let's say. It's important to get it relatively optimal, because your entire life depends on that, which is mind-blowing. Like, it's quite frightening, because it basically means your entire future is dependent on every single second of your day, which is difficult to really grasp, but it's super awesome to understand, or just to understand it a little bit. So in conclusion, we tend to think consciousness as being the state of being present in the moment, when actually consciousness is hooked onto your ancestors' consciousness, so it exists in the past and also in the future, because how you behave in the present, or your consciousness in the now, influences the remaining trajectory of your entire life, which is mind-blowing, really. So please leave a comment below whether you understand what I mean with how it exists in the past and in the future, and whether you disagree maybe, or whether that you have any other ideas or arguments for why our consciousness exists across time, spans across time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.